Hello, and welcome to the Tower Coffee Hour and our Ballot Mueller 2024 series of interviews. We are offering to interview all of the candidates that are on the ballot in our two voting precincts in November, and we'll cover some of the primary races in March as well. We have a number of candidates that are neighbors in Miller, and we will certainly cover their races. We will talk about the races and why they're important to our neighbors in Miller. We will look at maps to see what districts we're in and what districts we're near us. We will cover the city race for mayor, move to the Travis County Commissioner's race, the Justice of the Peace race, cover the district attorney's race, which is going to be interesting, and then cover the state races and end up with the U.S. representatives. We will not cover the U.S. Senate race or the presidential race. State Court of Appeals, 3rd District, is a huge district and covers lots of central Texas. It's that green thing right there in the middle. Today we're talking with Justice Thomas J. Baker, who is a Democrat and the incumbent in this seat. He has a primary opponent, Karen Crump, and she has agreed to talk with us later. Judge Baker got to be the first candidate we talked with this year because he knocked on our door and asked for a vote. So let's go talk with Justice Tom Baker.
There are 4 justices whose terms are up again, but only 2 of those 4 have primaries or general election. I have a primary, and Justice Ed Smith has a primary. Justice Smith is another incumbent that ran with me in 18. And there are 2 ladies, Justice Gisela Triana and Justice Shari Kelly. Those 2 ran with Justice Smith and myself in 18. All 4 of us won, but Justice Triana and Justice Kelly have neither primaries nor general election opponents in this election cycle, so they are effectively re-elected to new terms in office.
Okay, that's there are a lot of things I can say about electing justices, Tom, but it's it's kind of crazy.
It's unusual because our court, I don't know how this came about exactly, but historically, in one election cycle, 4 out of 6 justices are on the ballot, and in the other 2 election cycles, 1 each.
Okay.
Our Chief Justice, Darlene Byrne, ran in 2020, and she defeated her Republican incumbent Chief Justice Jeff Rose. And last year, Justice Rosa Theophanis, not last year, 2022, Justice Rosa Theophanis defeated her Republican challenger. Justice Melissa Goodwin retired and did not seek another term on the court, Justice Goodwin being the last Republican justice on our court.
Okay, so Tom, I want to ask a question. What impact does this position, this office, have on the residents of Miller?
It has a lot of impact, but it's just in the ordinary, everyday, matter-of-fact things that happen in a person's life. And let me give an example. In January, in succeeding weeks, I had 2 slip and fall accident cases, and in those 2 cases, the issue before the court was what's called sovereign immunity. The cases were, one case was against the city of Austin, and one case was involving Texas State University. Both plaintiffs in those 2 cases happened to be women who'd had accidents. One on a city of Austin street grate that broke through, and she had injury to a lower extremity, leg, and ankle. The Texas State case involved a stairwell with uneven stair levels. In both cases, the city of Austin and Texas State invoked what's called sovereign immunity to say they could not be sued. The trial courts disagreed and denied the governmental unit's claims of sovereign immunity, and we affirmed in each case in favor of the plaintiff having a right to go to trial on their claims. Now, those kind of things could happen to citizens here in Mueller, I'm sorry if I mess up the pronunciation, but I guess Mueller is how it comes off to my mind. In any event, those are things that could happen in your ordinary everyday life that could involve a government. Now, let me caveat that. In the last legislature, they created a new Court of Appeals called the 15th Court of Appeals that's going to go online on September 1st, 2024, with appointees of Governor Abbott, and they'll be elected statewide after the initial appointments to that court. And cases against government units will no longer be in our court. They will go to that court. So let me talk about something that could happen in our court. We review a lot of terminations of parental rights. Those are cases that usually involve or typically involve the Department of Family and Protective Services. And if somebody had a case where DFPS investigating a case of child abuse and neglect and it rose to a certain level, first point of contact with the legal system is the trial courts. And if those cases result in adverse decisions, they can be reviewed in the Third Court of Appeals. So those are some examples of cases that could wind up in an appeal in the Third Court of Appeals, but they always start in a trial court below us.
Okay, so you're an intermediate court between the Supreme Court and this regular local court, and that could be a city or county court that's a lower level?
We are an appellate court, yes.
Okay.
We are called an intermediate appellate court. Texas has 14 intermediate appellate courts.
15 now.
Yes, and a 15th going online in September 24.
Okay.
And we sit below the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is your highest civil court in Texas for civil appeals. The difference between them and us is we must hear all appeals that are brought to our court from one of the trial courts. We hear appeals from trial courts in 24 counties. The largest counties are easily Travis, and then Williamson, Bell County, and Hayes County. Those are the four largest, basically your I-35 corridor. And we must hear all cases that we have jurisdiction over, whereas the Supreme Court has what's called discretionary review. They just pick and choose cases. There's some cases they have to hear, but for the most part, they decide what appeals they'll hear if they think there's some issue of statewide jurisprudence or difference of intermediate courts. There is also a criminal court that's above us. That's the Court of Criminal Appeals. It's the highest criminal appellate court in Texas. Similarly, they have discretionary review, except death penalty cases where death has been imposed must automatically go directly to that court and bypass our court and the other intermediate courts.
Okay. So it's very convoluted. You don't want to get involved in this as a citizen,
Right. Right.
and so okay, so that's where you are. The next question. Let me do this. I've been wondering, hearing all this going on and everything, talking with Tom, is why would anybody want to do this? Why would anybody want to be a judge in the Court of Appeals, where you're an intermediate, you're hearing trials that have already happened, you're possibly passing them on to the Supreme Court? Why would you want to do that? And I'm going to assume that in Texas we don't pay judges all that much. So let's ask Tom. Tom, why is it that you want this job?
Okay. I have to go back to 2018 to answer your question. Back in 2018, and a year or two before that, I filed, before I was elected to the court, I had maybe 15 to 20 cases that I had in this court. And I had a couple of decisions that I disagreed with very strongly, and they were decided by the Justice David Puryear, whom I ran against. And it appeared to me the court was all Republican back in 2016 and 2018. 2016, Justice Melissa Goodwin, the last Republican, ran without a Democratic opponent. It appeared to me that the justices, the four Republicans that were on the ballot in 18, were not going to have Democratic opponents. In particular, it looked like Justice Puryear was going to get a pass, that no Democrat was coming forward to run. In fact, only four of us ran for four places on the ballot, but I decided that I would go out and get signatures and get on the ballot. Why? Because in this one of these appeals that was decided adversely to my client, and these clients affected whom I represented were all women, but one in particular was a woman who was denied her interest in her former spouse's military retirement rights. And it was devastating to my client, and I thought the result was incorrect. I decided if no other Democrat was going to step up, I was going to give it a shot, even though to be honest, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was scared, and I was basically feeling like I didn't have much of a chance. But I threw my hat in the ring, got the signatures to get on the ballot, and I ran because I thought it was the right thing to do. Now, why am I running again in 24? It's because at the beginning I had a learning curve. I think I cleared my learning curve. I think I have valuable experience now. I think I have democratic values that when the law and the case record allows me to apply, I know how to apply my values without legislating from the bench. Nobody wants judges to be acting like the legislature or the governor. We're a separate branch of government, and we need to know where our place is. But I practice my values, but I follow the law, and I try to interpret the law faithfully. I try to treat all people with equality, dignity, and respect. And the justice I ran against in 18, I thought in some of his opinions, he was gratuitously insulting in the opinions. In sentences in the opinion, there was unnecessary offensive language. And I set out when I ran to write opinions that were respectful and treated all people with dignity. And I think I've adhered to those principles, and I will faithfully do my job. I think I'm doing a good job, and the last 2 years, I've been 5th out of 80. Can I add one final thought to what I was saying?
I wish you would. Let me get you back to just you. There you go. Okay.
My only additional thought about why I chose to pursue this and pursue it again was because I thought I was a practicing attorney for 30 years. I'd served in the Navy Judge Advocate General's Corps after law school. Then I'd been a practicing lawyer for 30 years, board certified in family law. I thought I could bring all that experience as a practicing lawyer to a court where, rather than just have career judges on your courts, have lawyers that had practical experience representing parties and having cases in trial courts.
Wow. Okay. So you had some great reasons, some reasons where you felt that the previous judge had made some incorrect decisions, and they hurt your clients, and that you felt like your background with family law and in the military made a difference.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's a short version.
Yeah, that's a short version. I get a little long-winded at times.
Okay, we are going to unplug things. We lost some equipment here in the studio, but I think it's still going out. It looks to me like it's still going out, so we'll see what happens. Tom, there's another question that I always like to ask is, what is different about Tom Baker. It means that I, as a resident of Miller, and that we're focusing on Miller because that's who most of our audience is. Uh, what is it different about Tom Baker that says I should vote for you?
It's sort of dovetails with the previous
what you were
answer.
talking, yeah.
And I bring appellate experience to the job now. I bring Democrat values to the job. I bring the fact that I'm past my learning curve. A person that's new at anything has a learning curve. That's just a matter of human reality. And I've gone through my learning curve. I have a good relationship. I think I have a good relationship, and my colleagues at the court would say so if they were allowed to. But judges can't endorse other judges, so they can't really speak out about the court publicly. But I think if they could, I think they would say that Tom Baker has a good working relationship with the other justices. I collaborate on panels with every other justice on the court. But mostly I fall back on my values. I think my heart and my head are in the right place to do the job. I'm a humble person by nature, and I humble myself to look at the cases and look at the parties. We're dealing with cases and parties that are paper, but they're people behind the paper. And I feel the lives of those people that are on those papers that we're deciding cases on. We're not seeing the human beings that the trial courts see. We're seeing them in briefs, in trial records, a court reporter's record, a clerk's record of pleadings and filings in the trial court. And I try to put my place in my own family in the places of those persons. And I take every case with the utmost seriousness, and I try to reach the right result. And once again, I think my experience is worth keeping. And I never intended to stay on this court more than 2 terms. I think 2 terms is the right amount of time. 1 term to get to your peak, and then a 2nd term to take advantage of what you have under your belt the 1st term. And so I think 2 terms is the right, and I never intended to go beyond that, but I would like to keep serving Travis County, the Mueller neighbors, and all of the 24 counties of our court. And I love my job.
Yeah.
I love my job. That's what it's about to me now.
So you said something. I want to back up a little bit, and let's talk about where you were born, where you grew up, your military service, your education. Where'd you get your degree, your law degree?
Okay, I'll start kind of at the beginning.
Start at the beginning.
I'm a native of Denison, Texas. Where's Denison, Texas, or what's Denison, Texas? Little known trivia. It's the birthplace of President Dwight Eisenhower. And he lived there a short time, and his family moved. My father, I think, worked on the Katy Railroad up on the Red River, Lake Texoma, and moved to Abilene, Kansas, and that's the area President Eisenhower is associated with. Anyway, I was born, lived about my first 9 years on the earth in Denison. Our dad moved us around. I lived in Memphis, Tennessee. I was living in Memphis during the turbulent 1960s. We were actually living in Memphis, Tennessee, the year of the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy. And we moved the following year back to Texas. Our dad was relocated to Longview. Our dad worked for a finance company. We weren't moving on military orders. But I went to high school at Pine Tree High School in Longview, graduated. I was 17 when I graduated. I thought I need to get out in the world. My mom I was underage, so mom gave me permission to enter enlisted service in the Army. I served a 2-year enlistment. I wanted to get on with my college and with further education. I was in love with journalism back in the day. It was the time of Woodward Bernstein and Watergate. And that kind of inspired me towards journalism. I worked on the high school paper at Pine Tree High School in Longview. I worked on the Daily Texan. Started college at UT El Paso one semester, but my dream was to go to the University of Texas, and so I had to move on in my dream. And my dream was uh, to be here in Austin at UT. And so I majored in journalism, and I went to the College of Communications, worked on the Daily Texan. I graduated with my journalism degree in '79. I had enough government hours that I wanted to, and I loved government. It was a time of John Hill. John Hill is one of my heroes and role models in Texas government, and I was very crushed when he did not win the governorship, when he lost the governor's race to Bill Clements back in, I think that was '78. Or in any event, I was in love with government. I had enough government hours to get a second undergraduate degree, went ahead and got a BA in government at UT. Now, I went, uh, I paused a little bit in my education. I went on to law school at the University of Houston. Uh, uh, so I'm kind of a Longhorn, I'm kind of a Cougar. And I love both schools, but my heart's here in Austin, and it probably is at the University of Texas more than anywhere else. After I got my law degree in '83, I got licensed in '84, and I was commissioned during law school in the United States Naval Reserve, uh, commissioned as an ensign in the Navy. I went on after I got my law license well, I had gone to officer candidate school in Newport, Rhode Island, and then justice school, and I served in the JAG Corps in the Navy from '84 to '91 at Corpus Christi, Guam, and Naval Reserve Command, New Orleans. I was awarded 2 Navy Commendation Medals for service, unit service, and individual service. And after that, I practiced. I was assistant county attorney in Beeville, Texas. Practiced with an old Navy friend in Beeville, and I went on to practice in Bell County, where I met my wife, dated, we got married. My wife was teaching schools in Temple, and so we settled in Temple. I began a practice in Killeen in the Fort Hood area because of my military background, and I basically was happy practicing law, principally family law, and in 2010 got board certified in family law. I did a lot of pro bono legal work for people that couldn't afford legal services. I helped Lone Star Legal Aid in Bell County with volunteer lawyer cases. I took them every time they needed a volunteer lawyer and they asked me. I took them. I represented family violence victims, either on paid basis or pro bono if they needed pro bono services, and I helped veterans. And we had a lot of veteran projects providing legal services to veterans who needed legal services, and some couldn't afford legal services. We did a lot of veterans legal clinics in Bell County, which I'm proud I participated in. And that, I guess, fast forward to 2018, I decided I thought I could do good and do service, and I wanted to serve on the Third Court of Appeals, and that this is the greatest honor in my life. This job at the Third Court is the greatest honor, and I was humbled at the beginning. I didn't go into it for glory or power or the wrong reasons. I went in to do justice and to do what I did as a lawyer, which was to find justice and fairness and treat all people with dignity, respect, and justice.
Wow.
Sorry, that was a little too long.
No, it's not too long because it covers the ground. You know, it talks about birth, it talks about how you grew up, where you grew up, your military service. You know, my grandson went through the Judge Advocate General's program in the paratroops. So he's a paralegal in the paratroops now, which I get a big kick out of. And he's 23 years old, and so he's going to get out of the paratroops and be in a good place. So, yeah, it's the military justice is a different world, isn't
I got to go back and cover the most important thing in my life,
it?
and I need to do a mea culpa here. The most important thing in my life is parenthood, and I think that's the most important calling there is in life is children and parenthood. And we've raised two wonderful daughters. They both have, we've got our second one through college now, and Sarah's our older child, our older daughter, and Emily is our younger daughter. We love them to death, and we're a close family, and both got their college degrees, and they're both on their way in life. Sarah's married, and Emily is got her beau, and both working. They work up in the Irving, Texas area.
Good.
So I was very remiss to not talk about Sarah and Emily in that.
Good catch.
Yes, sir.
So let's, while we're there, I think I can find a picture of Sarah and Emily somewhere. So here we are, Tom. We're on your website. Justice Baker, re-elect Democrat Justice Thomas Baker.
And that is Sarah up in the top, and
Okay.
that's her husband Jack.
All right.
Jack works for Boeing. He's a computer geek.
Okay.
And Sarah, our older daughter, Sarah born New Year's Eve in '96.
Wow.
And Emily are sitting there in the middle between her mom, Cindy, my wife. We were married July 2nd, 1994, and we our family's about love, and that's Emily between us. Emily was born 7/11/2000, and we both love our girls to death.
Great.
And that's the greatest thing in life is your children. Our children everything else is second to that.
Okay. In your material, and I've got a copy of one of his handouts here that he brought me when he came by. It's got an interesting statement on here. It says, block Abbott's appointment, vote Baker. And I want to show that that's actually on your website as well. And it's right there on your website. Vote Baker, block Abbott. What is that all about, Tom?
I feel like the most important message of my campaign that I've tried to get to Democrats, and maybe I haven't got it widely enough out, but I'm going to keep trying until March the 5th. My opponent, and let me say this, we've reviewed cases that have been from my opponent is Judge Crump. She's the judge of the 250th District Court in Travis County. I respect Judge Crump, but I think I respect her wanting to advance her career to the third court or a higher court, but she won another term at her court in 2022, and trial judges serve 4-year terms. Texas law allows a judge to keep an office and run for another judicial office. A judge cannot run for any other office at the same time.
Okay.
A judge cannot hold their office and run for any office except another judicial office.
Mm-hmm.
So Judge Crump is allowed to keep her office and run for my office. But if she were to defeat me, she would have to begin serving in 2025, January 1. There would be 2 years, up to 2 years left on the term that she won in 2022 to her court. And so effectively, the governor of Texas has the power to fill vacancies in offices. Greg Abbott would fill a vacancy left in an office. Judge Crump would leave up to 2 years vacancy in her office, would leave 2 years vacancy in her office, and Greg Abbott would fill the remainder of that term. and he would fill it with a Republican because he doesn't appoint Democrats to offices for vacancies. And I think that one of the last appointments Greg Abbott made was a judge named Cleve Doty. And the last year, we reversed Cleve Doty's decisions at least 4 times in a very short span of time. And 3 of those cases were terminations of parental rights. And only the Lord knows how many cases people were not able to appeal because they didn't have the means to appeal from bad decisions in a trial court. Well, the point is we would have 2 Democrats if I remained on the 3rd court and my opponent remained on the 250th District Court, and we would have a Republican appointee to an important Travis County trial court. And that judge would hear and decide a number of cases. And in my mind, an appointment by Greg Abbott for any period of time is not a good thing for our courts. So I'm trying to tell our party that there's no reason to give Greg Abbott an appointment to a Travis County trial bench. In the future, certainly I can understand my opponent advancing in her career to higher office, but a judge has the ability to step aside from an office and let somebody else hold that office and then run for another judicial office. And we have a justice on our court, Justice Triana, who ran with us in 18, but Justice Triana was running against a Republican at the 3rd court. She was not running to get rid of a Democrat at our court. Now, she left a vacancy in her term. Chief Justice Byrne is on our court, but she ran after her term as a trial judge ended. Okay. So she left her bench to a Democrat to take over instead of leaving a vacancy. And Justice Triana's vacancy came while winning a place on our court. So that would have been a 1-1 deal any way you slice it, rather than a Democrat being replaced by a Democrat and a Democrat being replaced by an Abbott Republican.
Right. Okay, so you're real clear on this. I can see where you're coming from. Let's go here, and I want to say that we are, as we do these interviews, we are guaranteeing 30 minutes of live time, and we've got through that now, and we're going to cut it off at 40 minutes. So we've got about 10 minutes for you to say something you haven't said to convince me and the Mueller residents that they ought to vote for you.
Well, the reason to vote for me, to me, the most important reason to vote for me is keeping 2 Democrats on 2 benches, and one on your important trial court in Travis County, and one on our Court of Appeals. And if you looked at my I've written or decided 585 cases, civil and criminal cases. And if you look at my record of if you could look at my cases, you could see the fairness. You could see that I've treated people. I think you could see a good record of opinions is what you could see. And by the way, you can read 3rd court opinions. You can go to 3rd COA website. You can go back and look at opinions and records. And there's one case that my opponent has cited against me. I didn't decide this case. It was a case called Grassroots. It was a case decided before I came to the 3rd court. And it was decided by the justice that I defeated, the justice who wrote the opinion. And after we got to the court, there was a question of whether our whole new court should review what the prior court before us did. I concluded that the Supreme Court was going to review this case, and I decided that rather than a new court undoing what our court had done, that I didn't agree with, by the way. It was a decision involving housing of migrant children with unrelated adults. And it was a Department of Family and Protective Services rule. And the issue revolved on whether some of the parties had standing to file the lawsuit. And I thought they had a case. The Supreme Court, and to its credit, reversed what the previous Republican third court had done. They sent it back to us, and I got to write the opinion that undid what the justice that I defeated had written, that I disagreed with, but thought the correct thing was for the Supreme Court to reverse what happened rather than a new court coming in and changing. And I did not, and there was an injunction in place the entire time on appeal from the trial court through the appellate process. There was an injunction keeping this rule of the Department of Family and Protective Services from being in effect. So there was no harm done, is what I'm trying to say, while the appellate review was proceeding. Now, I want to say one more point that's important to me. All the justices on our court, they're from here in Austin. And I would love to have a second residence in Austin, but I happen to reside in Bell County. It's a rural red county. Our party needs people like me from not just our strong blue city areas. It needs to grow in red Texas, or we're never going to get power in the two more important branches of government, or two important branches of government. The legislature, they pass bills, and we've got to get power in the other branch, the executive branch, which signs bad bills into law. And if we have bad laws, the judges cannot fix bad laws. Bad laws have to be fixed in the other two branches of government. I'm from one of those rural red areas, and we haven't had Democrat candidates to vote for. My opponent has picked on me that I voted in a Republican primary in 2016. I had no Democrat candidates to choose from. So what point is she making by saying I should have voted in a primary with no candidates on the ballot? Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. And normally, every other year, I did vote. They went back to 2012 to find another year. And why did I do that? There was a very, very good judge. In our county, Democrats run as Republicans. They run as Republicans because they don't think they can win running in our party. And people like me are going to help change that by inspiring young Democrats that they can win as Democrats and don't have to run under the flag of a Donald Trump MAGA Republican Party. So I shouldn't stay on the court for that reason, but I shouldn't be booted off the court for that reason. I'm a strong Democrat. I love our party. I love its values and its principles. And I'll always be a Democrat, and I've always been a Democrat. The first election I could vote in was 1976. That was the first year I was eligible. I voted for Jimmy Carter, and I voted for Jimmy Carter in 1980. I was crushed in 80 when Reagan won, and when we lost a lot of good Democrat senators in a bloodbath in 1980. And that coupled with Attorney General John Hill losing to Clements, I mean, those were sad times in my political day. But back to the point, I'm a Democrat from a rural red county, and I voted once in the primary to keep a respected judge from a bad candidate. So that doesn't make me a Republican. I'm not a Republican. My opponent has tried to paint me with that color, and it's not fair and it's not accurate. And I support the same constituencies that she does. I have the same values that she does, if not more so. And I love serving you, and I love my job. And thank you for being here and for listening. And I love this area. I really love. I've been walking Mueller. I've been walking Mueller a lot, and I love your neighborhood a lot.
Well, it was fun to have him walk up on the front porch and say, "Hi, I'm Justice Baker, and I want your vote." So, Tom, I appreciate you coming and sitting down with us and expressing your feelings about where you are and what you're doing, and giving us some background on why the court's important. Because I hear, particularly some of the cases you've been in have been family cases,
Right.
and that's your background, and that's great. And I really do appreciate your time. And I know we've had fun trying to get together and make this work, and you went out of your way to make it work. So I appreciate that.
And by the way, let me apologize for my car problems yesterday. Uh,
Hey,
and thank you. And I I'm I I really I love my job. And I can't say that enough. And I love serving people, and I love finding justice and fairness to all.
okay, that's it for another interview on the Tower Coffee Hour. This is the first one in a long series. We've got a long way to go to get to November 5th. So uh, stay tuned, keep watch. We'll keep posting about when we go live, and you get to see it live, but this will be posted on the Tower Coffee Hour after we finish. So you get to see it anytime from now on until the election. So we hope for the best for Tom Baker, and we'll see you down the road, Tom.
Thank you. So that's the end of the live session with Thomas J. Baker, Justice in the Third Court of Appeals, Seat 5. And he has an opponent, and we'll be talking with her, Karen Crump, coming up pretty soon. This will be posted on the Tower Coffee Hour. It should be up within the week. So good luck. Let's all go vote and make a difference in our democracy.